Welcome to another episode of The Greatest Pod, where we discuss and debate what makes something great. I'm Ron Swallow.
I'm Ed Greer.
And I am producer Bill, back in the saddle with the boys.
Oh,
Yeah.
we are excited. Today, we're going to have a competition. This is new for The Greatest Pod. We are going to decide who the greatest is, Stallone or Schwarzenegger. It's gonna be
Set the stage a little more because I'm about to relish my role in this. It's going to be Ron versus Ed, and I'm going to cast the deciding vote as the referee / Simon Cowell of this competition. So I'm excited.
Yeah, this is going to be a blast. We're gonna try to go through, talk a little bit about each person, Stallone and Schwarzenegger, their body of work, the stuff that did well, the stuff that did bad, the stuff that aged terribly or aged great, if that exists as well. And so let's start with favorites. Let's do that. Favorite Schwarzenegger movie, favorite Stallone.
Favorite Schwarzenegger, Conan the Barbarian. Favorite, almost tied with Terminator, but I gotta say one, so I'm gonna say Conan the Barbarian. And Stallone, Rocky 3, bitch. Fuck you.
Oh, yes.
let's start out. Let's start out with a real opinion. Rocky 3,
Okay.
motherfucker.
All right. Cool. Bill?
Man. So Schwarzenegger, I feel like, is the easier one for me because I'm just going to go Terminator 2. I feel like Schwarzenegger found that character and perfected it in Terminator 2. Stallone is tough. See, here's the thing. I think the original Rocky is one of the greatest movies ever made in the history of cinema. And Stallone wrote it, starred in it, makes that movie. Rocky 3 is by far the biggest crowd pleaser of that series. I'm with Ed on that. But I may have to give it to the first movie in which I ever was captivated by the raw magnetic presence of Sly Stallone. And that, my friends, is Demolition Man.
Whoa, yeah, nice. See,
I
nice.
like that pick. That is a good pick, producer Bill.
Well, yeah,
Absolutely.
I almost picked T2. It just seemed a little basic, but whatever. No, but
Oh.
no, but T2,
But
because
it is
shots.
T2 almost surpasses an Arnold Schwarzenegger film, if that makes any sense. It's like one of the few movies I think that he's in where it's bigger than him. Obviously, he's a key part of it, but Terminator 2's impact is just outsized. It's like what if you did Jurassic Park with fucking Arnold Schwarzenegger in it? You know what I mean? It's huge to me. So, but yeah,
that whole movie. Who is he playing?
Hold on to your butts.
Is he playing Jeff Goldblum?
I don't think I would buy all that math.
Nature happens.
No, he's playing the Triceratops.
Oh, yeah,
That's what he's playing.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go with clearly Jingle All the Way.
Jeez, even Sinbad wouldn't say that.
Do we have to?
I'm just kidding. It is not Jingle All the Way. You know what's funny is I kind of want to say Commando, even though T2 is probably the one that I think I like the movie better. There's something about Commando that I just love because it's just this super simple. Here's the good guy carrying a log. He's very strong. Here's the bad guy being bad guys. And then the bad guy does a bad thing and takes his daughter, tries to get him to do something, and then that guy kills them all. And that's literally the movie, and I enjoy it a lot. So I'm going to go ahead and just say Commando.
I'm changing my pick before we get too far down here. It's fucking Predator. I just thought about it.
Yep.
I just
Isn't it
really
hard?
thought about it. Yeah, no, it's super fucking hard. That's another thing. The reason why we're having this conversation is this is they got 5 movies that are okay and 7 that are trash, and we're just sort of picking through the detritus. These guys had runs. They each had a run. So these are hard. But yeah, it's Predator just because if you're going to use, just like in Commando, if you're going to use his physique and his bearing and everything, why not go the extra step? See, most movies have Schwarzenegger with his big ass in movies with little ass dudes. You know what I'm saying? Even Conan had big ass dudes that fought him and stuff, but a lot of times Sven Ole Thorson will be the only person as big as him in the whole movie. You know what I'm saying? And I just
let me just throw a monkey wrench in there. I want you to finish your thought. But in terms of movies with Schwarzenegger and a bunch of little ass dudes, you can't go wrong with either Twins or Kindergarten Cop. Just want to throw that out there.
God, you know what? You're right. Twins is actually really funny.
No, dude, each of them have one of them has great comedy hits. One of them has some great comedy hits. The other one, not so much. But just last things last about Predator. Everybody knows what I'm going to say. You put him with a team of ultra badasses, and something that kills a whole team of ultra badasses has to be taken out by a Paleolithic version of Arnold Schwarzenegger. Arnold Schwarzenegger has to strip himself down of all these high-tech weapons and go back to bows, arrows, spears, logs. That's how he's going to defeat an alien from space, and only a hardcore Boy Scout could do that. It's like, it's quintessential Schwarzenegger. I don't think I've seen anything that distills his essence more than that movie.
You might say it's the most Schwarzeneggerian of all Schwarzenegger movies.
I think it's up there at least. Like, I picked Conan because Conan honestly falls all apart without him. We've seen all types of muscle-bound fuckers with smoldering eyes try to do the Conan role. We've seen it on TV. We saw Jason Momoa try to do it. There's one Schwarzenegger. He played Conan that time, and it's over. And he did that for Terminator 2, obviously. You could never see anybody else playing the Terminator, which is why the Terminator franchise sucks so bad. Because they keep trying to find these ways to bring him back that don't make any sense.
Yep.
But you can't have the movie without him because he's so awesome. Yep. So, Catch-22.
Well, unless you did it in the style of our rebooted episode, in which case it would be amazing.
Clearly.
There's a plug for you. Go check out Rebooted on YouTube. The Terminator episode is just chef's kiss.
It really is good. It's a really good one. So for Sylvester, I think I'm going to go with The Party at Kitty and Studs. If you don't know, that was the softcore porn he did in 1970. So
my God.
Thought you were gonna say what streets of whatever that fuck Paradise Alley, whatever the fuck weird movie you did.
You know what the funny thing is, when I think about it, like technically I know that I probably like Rocky 3, all of the Rockies actually. I don't know if there's even a Rocky I don't like except for the one with Tommy Morrison. So
yeah,
they're all good. But there's a part of me that wants to pick the Expendables.
That's interesting, dude.
What a hipster. Why would you be the hipster? We got Bill for that. What are you doing, Ron?
I don't even know if that's hipster. It's just that, like, it's a kick-ass action movie. And really, he's not that great in it, though. So I don't think it counts as his best Stallone movie.
Dude, I mean, like, let's be real here. Like, what are we talking about? Stallone has got Rocky, Rambo, he's got Cliffhanger, Daylight, Judge Dredd, like all these 90s atrocious pieces of crap that are still watchable because of him. And you're going to go with the Expendables? Come on, man.
Okay, so
we're better than this, Ronnie.
And now that you said Cliffhanger, I'm going Cliffhanger.
Okay. That's
I'm kidding.
Still a weird choice, dude, but still.
It's Rocky 3. It's Rocky 3. It is Rocky 3. If we're being real, it's Rocky 3.
Why would you be real? The cutoff shirts, the boxing cultural appropriation montage.
Oh, man. Just like there is no tomorrow. There is no tomorrow. That's
My favorite scene is them racing on the beach when Rocky finally beats Carl Weathers.
Of course it is, dude. That's so homoerotic. Like, it's the best.
Oh, the water splashing up, hugging each other is beautiful.
Dude, the frothy water popping up on them. It's not regular waves. It's all frothy and shit.
Dude.
Yes.
Perfect. We gotta. Oh yeah. Okay. So yeah,
we got a little bit of who's what we're into, what we've liked, and what we've enjoyed. So now we've got to kind of talk about what is success in this competition. What does success count as in this competition? Is it, so Stallone, just like producer Bill said, making probably one of the best movies of all time in the first Rocky, or is it multiple blockbusters and monetary success like Schwarzenegger had?
Well, and it's also weird because, you know, they as similar as they are superficially, these guys have had wildly different careers, right? Like Stallone entered the industry as an independent screenwriter and like, you know, indie movie actor and sort of built himself into this action hero that at times you almost feel like he's uncomfortable with. It's like he always comes back around to doing more interesting projects every time he gets wrapped up in a franchise. Whereas Schwarzenegger, from the beginning, was just the world's most charismatic beefcake who was all surface, no depth, and Hollywood just found interesting ways to use him. So they both became icons of an era, and they, you know, have often been compared. But I just want to get out up front. Like, these are not really similar guys in terms of their trajectory or even their acting. They're on two different totally wavelengths.
Well, yeah, but it's, you know, I liken it to sports, right? Like, the one team will be a bunch of bruisers who'll put you on your ass, football, basketball, baseball, whatever. One team's bruisers, the other team's like, skip, doop, doo-doo, they're all fast and they're doing shit. And it's like, it's almost like that type of dichotomy, right? These two teams are at the top of their game, but they play the game totally different. So I definitely acknowledge that point. And I also acknowledge, as a little brick in the wall of my case for Stallone, he's responsible for the shit that he does, to his detriment sometimes. You know what I'm saying? He when he gets a script, he takes it over. He has to rewrite it. He has to have his guy look at it. He rewrites his guy. He's so hands-on with all this shit. So his successes are on him, and his failures, I think a lot of the times, are the ones that he didn't do that. Some of the ones where he let himself be an instrument. Some of those are the worst movies, besides, I'd say, maybe Copland, if you're into that shit. You know what I'm saying? But a lot of times when he put his foot down, those movies are fucking great. They were better than they were supposed to be.
Well, I mean, if we're just going on franchises, right? Just the fact that Stallone has Rocky, Rambo, and Ron's favorite of all time, The Expendables, to his name.
Yeah.
And he really drove, to your point, Ed, the creative and sort of the longevity of every one of those franchises all the way up to the current day. I mean, that is way more of an achievement than, essentially Schwarzenegger has the Terminator movies. Those movies have sort of dragged his corpse through the cinematic wastelands. Like, again, it's just very, very different. So I think that's a point to Stallone right there, just in terms of like being able to find ways to keep these franchises alive and sort of investing himself fully in the franchises to do so. I mean, it's kind of no contest.
Yeah, and as far as that goes, I 100% agree. But I will say that I don't know if Stallone can be funny. I really don't. I don't know if he can do it at all. Like, I don't think he can do it.
No. Here's the thing. On a pure charisma level, Stallone falls way short. It's just true.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, like, Arnold's like hilarious in a couple of movies, and even those cheesy ass like Commando. What's a couple other like kind of? I mean, I guess Predator, arguably. You know, some of these other ones where he was just basically like this guy doing one-liners.
Well, I mean, but that's the thing, though. In Predator, just to be clear, in Predator, he got one off. He had to get one off, and it was inside that when they attacked that rubble base. But he's, you one ugly motherfucker comes straight out of character. A lot of those other lines come straight out of character. But yeah, he got one-liner off in Predator, which is why Predator's superior to a lot of other shits. He doesn't really do a bunch of them.
It is funny though, Ron. I mean, your inability to sort of come up with examples of the Schwarzenegger one-liner speaks to the fact that like it has almost become a parody of himself, because I would argue some of the biggest Schwarzenegger one-liner vehicles are movies like Batman and Robin and True Lies, which, is a much better movie than Batman and Robin, but was essentially designed as a parody. Like, that movie is designed to take his screen persona and sort of skewer it. And I think it's to Schwarzenegger's credit that, like, especially as his career, found its legs, he really leaned all the way into that. But
Last Action Hero, for instance.
Yeah, Last Action Hero, even Kindergarten Cop. I mean, Kindergarten Cop is a very quotable movie, but, he's very much playing that fish out of water. It's not exactly him in commando mode as John Matrix impaling people by javelining pipes that he just ripped off a wall into their rib cage.
Oh, to which he says, "Blow off some steam, Bennett." That's what he says on that one.
Yeah.
And when he says that when he snaps that guy's neck and leaves him in the seat, and he gets up to go jump on the landing gear and escape the plane so that he can outwit the guys. He goes, "Don't bother my friend. He's dead tired." Shit like that. Like, but Commando, that's Stephen E. D'Souza, man. That dude who did the giant rewrite of Die Hard. At that moment, he was the voice of, if you had pecs and you had some snaps, Stephen E. D'Souza was right there to give you some good lines to say. So that's a product of its time. But yeah, he tried to take it all these other places. And the fact that he is so quotable, it's funny that we are so charmed by his voice. They couldn't, when they played Terminator in Austria, they couldn't use Schwarzenegger's voice. They had another person that was Austrian dub his voice, because to Austrian ears, his accent sounds like he's a fucking hillbilly.
Oh, wow.
His particular Austrian accent is like, "Hey, y'all, what's everybody doing there? Oh, hell no, man, I got goddamn boy." That's how he sounds to them. So they decided not to, they dubbed him over. So, dude, it's interesting that we find him so charming over here, because he's like a real fucking Superman story. An immigrant, he lands on our shores. The natural way that he is just gets over on everybody. He's huge and indestructible.
Dude, I have to bring up, the legend of Schwarzenegger really begins with pumping iron.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Let's talk about it. And I'm just going to get this out. I'm divorced now, but when I got married, in the room that me and the groomsmen were waiting for the ceremony to start, I had pumping iron playing on a giant projector, like on my wedding day. And, that's as homoerotic as it sounds, but I just want to say, that movie is probably a better showcase than any other of just the raw, magnetic charisma of Arnold Schwarzenegger. Literally just a movie in which he talks about how great he is for 2 hours. It's bizarre, man, but yeah, there is a certain just magnetism to the guy.
Who do you think has been the most successful gross-wise, like monetarily?
Do you have this stat at the ready?
I do.
Ooh.
Dude,
I would guess Stallone.
Yeah. Okay, you guessed Stallone. I think it's one of those dicey, that seems like a dicey ass trick question. I purposely looked down instead of at Ron, because I didn't want him to do a tell, even though he's a poker master. You know what I mean? Because Terminator and stuff are such high points. Like if Arnold Schwarzenegger was in fucking Avatar, this would be no contest. But due to the fact that a lot of his stuff were like middling, they're $100 million. Eraser made $100 million. So like, it's a weird scale with these guys. I'm gonna say, I think I might go Schwarzenegger, but I hope I'm wrong.
It is Schwarzenegger, but here's the thing.
Wow.
It's barely Schwarzenegger. Stallone has had 44 films, and altogether, he has had made $3.9 billion aggregate box office. So pretty great. But then we have Schwarzenegger at 30 films with $4.1 billion. So
wow.
He's number 33 as far as leading actors making money. I'm super curious who's number one now, but I'm going to assume it's Tom Cruise or something like that.
That's not a bad guess. I mean, look, the thing you forget, right, is Schwarzenegger did have a run, I would almost say mostly in the 90s, maybe starting in the late 80s, but where every single movie that he did really was like the blockbuster of the summer, even if a lot of them were terrible or middling, either way, like Schwarzenegger was a Tom Cruise level star. And I don't know that Stallone was ever that. Like, let's just be honest with ourselves. Stallone was a big player, but was Stallone ever like in the hallowed halls in the heyday of the movie star? You know, I just don't know.
Well, I think one thing, if it's true that he wasn't, I think part of it was you get a lot of baggage when you mess with Stallone, like we've talked about earlier. When he kind of signs onto the script, all of a sudden there's another $10 million on the budget for development. There just is, because he comes on and it's like, I don't want to be a punk little dude from Detroit. I want to be Cobra. Well, this is called Beverly Hills Cop. Your name's Axel Foley or Axel Scioli or whatever the hell his name was at the time. You know what I mean?
But here's another interesting fact with Stallone. He's actually had a number one film in 6 straight decades.
Huh.
In the 70s, he had Rocky, First Blood in 82, Demolition Man in 1993, 2001 Driven, 2010's The Expendables was number 1, and now he was on the Suicide Squad. So the guy has literally had a number 1 movie for 60 years.
One in a decade for 60 years. That's a lot.
Yeah.
You know, it also speaks to the fact that, like, Stallone is just a film guy. And I think I was talking about this a little bit earlier, but, you know, his interest is essentially in making movies. And, you got to give it to him. Like we said, he started as an indie screenwriter. He's directed a few things. He's really been a creative force behind his own franchises. Schwarzenegger has never really been that guy. I mean, from the beginning, like, Schwarzenegger has had this abiding interest in fitness and bodybuilding that he, you know, I don't know how many of our listeners know this, but like the biggest bodybuilding competition in the world is called the Arnold, and he runs it. Like, it's a company that he owns. And I mean, it's grown from being a bodybuilding competition. They have power lifters and gymnasts and like all of these sort of individualized, you know, body-based performance sports. The Arnold is like the big show for those people. So that's something that he's cultivated since the very beginning. Obviously, he's had, you know, a very well-publicized foray into politics, an even more publicized foray into activism. I mean, the guy has been, you know, on the forefront of a bunch of different causes for probably the past 20, 30 years. You know, and now he's a bit of a businessman. I think, you know, his kids are maybe more into it than him, but it's like he owns a cigar brand. I think he owns a booze brand. Like, he's definitely owned multiple restaurants over the years beyond just Planet Hollywood, which Stallone was also involved in. Arnold is big in LA real estate. Like, the dude is just kind of a bon vivant for a thick-headed immigrant. Like, he actually is quite the cosmopolitan dude. And it's so funny because I think he's intensely smart, but to this day, he still sort of carries that persona of like, I say whatever comes into my head. And that's what we find charming about him, so it works. But like, there's a lot more going on with Schwarzenegger than there is with Stallone, if you really look at it.
It's interesting.
No, I mean, let me agree, because I think the difference between Stallone and Schwarzenegger is this. Stallone wanted to make films, as you said, and wanted to be, and saw that he could become a movie star, that him making films and him being a movie star could exist in the same universe, and it blew his mind. And he just got so into it, right? Whereas Arnold Schwarzenegger is the fucking Michael Jordan, Jim Brown, great hero Jim Thorpe type guy of bodybuilding. And then transitions from being the Michael Jordan of something into acting and works his way up in America and learns English properly and buys land in Venice. First big check he gets from all that weightlifting bullshit. He comes over here and buys up a bunch of real estate in Venice when it was $2. You know what I'm saying? And now so basically by the time he started making movies, he was already rich. Because being a bodybuilder didn't make you rich back then. It'd be foolish to think that. But the money he got from there, he was able to invest, and then he became actually rich, and then started doing movies. Because I think he is the type of guy who just comes and needs to succeed at something, and whatever you want to slot me in, let's go. I'll slot into this, acting. He could have been a television presenter. Imagine Arnold Schwarzenegger doing Howard Cosell's job through the 80s or something. He would have killed it. We would be talking about him like one of the greatest sportscasters of all fucking time if he had chosen to do that.
You're totally right about that, and I actually hadn't really thought that. But he does have that exact Michael Jordan mentality of like, it's not about art or craft. It's anything that I enter, I need to beat everybody at it. And which is, a little bit sociopathic, but like that is definitely how Schwarzenegger has approached his life and his career. And he's very sort of vocal about that. And I think, again, Stallone might be a little bit more of an internal, I don't know if he's more intellectual, but he's definitely more of the sensitive artist type who I think you're very astute when you say kind of fell into the star lifestyle. And yeah, I think it was more than he ever really planned on, whereas Schwarzenegger came to America being like the Rock of his day. Like, oh no, I'm going to be the biggest thing in the world.
Yeah, I've got the biggest muscles. I'm going to be the biggest thing. That's what I'm going to do. Yeah, I 100% agree. It's interesting, too, though, because Stallone comes across as kind of a dumb person.
Mm.
So
does Arnold, stuff, though. Let's not get it twisted.
They both do. but the thing is, I think Stallone comes across that way and is not that way. Like, one of the things that's great about Rocky isn't the boxing. It's the slice of life. It's the character arc. There's this guy who wants to really be successful, and he's going to work his fucking ass off to be the most successful he can. And it's not even just successful. He just wants to hang with the big guys one time. That's what he wants to do. He just wants to prove it to himself and to the world that he can hang with the best. And he does it. And that is an inspiring story. I've watched a lot of Arnold Schwarzenegger movies. There's none of them have inspired me. Like, well, I mean, beyond saying these are cool and fun, and I like good movies.
Well, you know what I liken it to? I was watching this show, and long story boring, they're asking little kids, 8, 9, 10 years old, who do you want to be when you grow up? Who's your role model? And this little spindly kid who was like already like almost 12, but was 4 feet tall, said, I'm going to grow up and be like Shaq. And I was like, the one motherfucker you can't be like is who you picked. Like, what the fuck is your problem, kid? You know what I mean? And like, Arnold Schwarzenegger is that. You can't aspire to be Shaq. There's no doing Arnold. The Rock has gotten the closest. And I'm sorry, The Rock is RC compared to strong-ass, cocaine-laced Coca-Cola. If we're going to compare him to Arnold fucking Schwarzenegger. You know what I'm saying? And The Rock has come the closest. The Rock has by far come the closest. We're going to talk about some of the people who didn't reach the mountain of Stallone and Schwarzenegger and kind of dissect why they didn't in a segment I like to call "You Almost Made It." We'll do that. We'll do that later. But I just think you guys are definitely right about Schwarzenegger needing to dominate and all that jazz. But can we talk about the subversion of the image thing, though? Because we talked a little bit about how later in Schwarzenegger's career, he basically started doing these things that made fun of or thumbed their noses at his previous personas and shit. But Stallone did a whole run of movies where he didn't even pick up a gun.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You know, I just think that was he was first to that, I'll subvert myself, and he subverted himself way more than Arnold Schwarzenegger ever did. Just want to throw that point out there. I want to throw it out there.
I'm going to argue that one just because, like, I don't know if Cliffhanger and Demolition Man and Copland and
don't forget Daylight. Daylight is a personal shitty favorite.
I'm 100% with you on that. I think everybody needs to watch Daylight. It is an absolute action-packed thrill ride. I love it. But all I'm saying is I don't know if that subverts his on-screen persona as much as projects like Junior, Twins, Jingle All the Way, even Last Action Hero. And again, like, these are all goofy movies that are sort of trading on a different piece of the Arnold Schwarzenegger persona than maybe Stallone was trying to do. But again, like, Stallone still takes himself way too seriously, even when he's trying to subvert his on-screen persona. Meanwhile, Arnold leaves it all out on the table, screaming at toddlers about how their dads don't have tumor, or he doesn't have a tumor in his head. So I don't know, man. Who subverts better? I don't know.
Well, and
I'm
I'll
gonna go with Bill on this one. I'm gonna have to say I think Arnold does a better job in that. Like, look, Stallone did try to do some things that weren't all like me shooting all the brown people, but like he also did the couple of ones where he shot all the brown people, like over and over again. So I mean, I think subversion wise, I definitely have to go with Arnold on that. Funny wise, definitely got to go with Arnold. But
oh yeah,
artistic wise, I think I have to go with Sylvester Stallone. It's an interesting thing. So you guys know I love the Expendables. I think we're gonna go down this hole a little bit because I think it's also interesting because some of the guys in the Expendables you could compare in a way better to Arnold than you can to Stallone, and that is Dolph Lundgren, Jean-Claude Van Damme, and Steven Seagal was not in the Expendables, though he should clearly have been in there. But I think Steven Seagal can be thrown in that, even though he's not a big muscle guy. He was a just action guy. All these guys seem to have these careers. If you looked at their numbers, they actually have pretty good grossing films, but they were obviously not good.
Well,
but were they that much worse than Arnold?
Well, I mean, I think they certainly didn't put the whole package together the way Arnold did.
Yeah.
Seagal maybe not, but you certainly look at Lundgren and Jean-Claude Van Damme, and those are guys that very much followed the Arnold paradigm of like, they're coming out of athletic backgrounds from other countries and sort of trying to capture the attention of America with that combination of like physical prowess, exotic accent, and, inherent charisma. And it's like, Lundgren just didn't have the charisma, and JCVD, I don't know, man. There was something, I think the fact that he, has the French accent going on might throw people off, but they didn't have the je ne sais quoi.
Well, he's the muscles from Brussels, first of all.
I know, but it's still.
No, I totally agree, but I think it's just due to his accent.
He did sound French.
Well, due to his accent, he sounded kind of like Gambit when he was in Hard Target.
Yeah.
So basically, I just think he didn't sound naturalistic enough. Arnold Schwarzenegger somehow managed to sometimes sound somewhat naturalistic with that voice and that bearing because he put a little bit of his inborn charm into it. I do not know that Jean-Claude Van Damme has enough inborn charm to let his shit flow like that and be, I just never bought him.
The worst part is he does now. He has enough inborn charm now. Well, he doesn't have inborn charm. He has like earned charm now, where he's kind of figured out. This is the same with Mike Tyson. These guys have kind of figured out, like, oh, this was the person I was. And those were bad and kind of ridiculous. And now he kind of knows. And when he does stuff, Jean-Claude Van Damme's like kind of funny now. Like he kind of gets that he could have been bigger than he was because at the time, like Double Impact. Did you guys ever see Double Impact where he plays twins?
No.
He plays twins. And
wow. I think he played twins a couple times in his career, which fucking blows my mind, dude. I think in Maximum Risk or something he plays twins, and Double Impact he plays twins. Like, what the fuck is up with that? How obsessed with yourself are you? There must be two of me. I'm like Eddie Murphy. I must play all the roles.
I think Jean-Claude Van Damme also took himself a little too seriously. I mean, we know that where his career came from was when he went into a person's office and did scissor kicks. And was like, you should put me in movies. Like he's a crazy man who got put in movies because he went into the right office one time. Mm-hmm. It's just like, it's an interesting type of thing. Dolph Lundgren, like he was too intense in so many things, and like his attempts at humor were always like, I don't know why they were so faltering. And sometimes sometimes Arnold was faltering, but something about him just was fine.
Lundgren is a fucking genius, and I guarantee you, when he's on a movie set, he can't stop thinking about how many fucking, tachyons are rattling around, whatever the fuck, and shit like that, or how he fucked Grace Jones that time, or whatever. I think he's like a real, like, I live life guy, and sitting up and getting made up and having the sword and shit like that. I don't think he can buy it enough to make us buy it. Arnold Schwarzenegger, I know that he can envision himself as the baddest person and having all the best things to say and getting over in 4 second, 5 second, 1 minute, 2 minute chunks. I know he could process that. Acting is nothing to him because it's a mechanical exercise. That's another thing the directors have said about this motherfucker. I gotta give him a point for being more malleable than Stallone, even though I love the fact that Stallone wasn't malleable. If you tell Schwarzenegger, walk 3 steps, do a 15-degree turn, kneel, whip out your gun, cock it, think about Christmas, and extend your arm, he will do that thing the very next time you give him the take. He's a robot for real. And he takes physical direction probably better than any major star. I've heard that from several directors, and it's just like, yeah, when I talk to him in the sauna, what the fuck? But I've read a lot. I read a lot of shit.
And I still remember early in my career, I talked to a first AD who said that he loves working with actors who have athletic backgrounds because most actors who don't are just not aware of their physical presence. They just, it's the same way as like when you're trained in dance, when you're trained as an athlete, like you just get how your body works and how to move and how to do the same thing over and over again for the consistency of the takes. Yeah. And if you've never had training that makes you that physically aware, you don't. So the fact that Schwarzenegger is literally the world's greatest athlete in his chosen sport, yeah, that probably counts for something when you got to get on, especially an action movie set, and just nail the same thing over and over from all those different angles or whatever it is. Like, yeah, that's points to that guy.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Plus, he swung a sword pretty badass, I gotta say.
It wasn't that dope, and it was made of fucking rubber. Let's relax,
Okay,
for most of the takes. But yeah, dude, he looked like he was switching grips and shit. That's where you know it's on. You know what I'm saying? When you're switching grips as you're spinning the sword, that's where you know it's on. But before we get too far afield, hold your thought, Bill. I just want to state something about fucking Stallone, though. Stallone is not some natural beefcake.
True.
And sort of Schwarzenegger wasn't, but he got to developing himself earlier than I think Stallone did. Stallone was always sort of a push-ups and sit-ups guy and just go to work. But once he became a movie star and started seeing, when you saw the Rambo bodies he got in like Rambo 2 and 3 in particular, and Rocky 3, I would love to be as buff as Arnold Schwarzenegger. That would be super awesome. But if I was as fit as Stallone, I will whoop your ass, run 4 miles, whoop your ass, run 4 miles. That was the body that Stallone had. And he was eating like carrots and shit for 15 days in a row.
And steroids.
Chicken and
carrots
raw
and
eggs.
steroids, baby.
Hey, I was winking as I said carrots. So I just want to give him props. Anabolic or not, bro, you still gotta be Barry Bonds knocking those home runs out. So anabolic or not, he was balling. He was really fit, man.
Listen, there's no asterisks next to movie star names, so I don't begrudge him.
Yeah, if you don't think The Rock has done some roids in the last few years, you're out of your fucking mind. His head is like 4 times as big as it used to be. I almost said his egg is as big as 4 times as it used to be because his head looks like a fucking egg. So
don't get body slammed, Ron. He's the greatest.
Yeah, exactly.
He's the greatest man in sports entertainment. You shut your mouth.
The people's elbow just comes right out of the corner, right into Ron's head.
Shut your mouth and know your role.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of The Rock, though, let's talk about this. Schwarzenegger paved the way for a lot of guys. Yeah. And that's not just your Jean-Claude Van Dammes and your Dolph Lundgrens, but everybody, John Cena, The Rock, all the way down to guys like Hulk Hogan and Roddy Piper. I mean, I would argue that like this whole beefcake wrestler to Hollywood movie star pipeline wouldn't really exist without the likes of Arnold Schwarzenegger.
And I would argue that that's a demerit in my mind because they know they can't approximate what Stallone brings. take even away the other stuff. They know they can't approximate what he does, but you can get some, practice squad player and give them some lines and see if they can do it. You know what I'm saying? Arnold Schwarzenegger almost like, those people who are so good at something, they make it look easy and they make it look trainable, that he looks like a trained bear, even though he's not really. He's way better than a trained bear. He rides the little cycle because he wants to. You know what I mean? He's like slick with it. Yeah. And a lot of these beefcakes aren't. But none of them are fucking with Stallone as far as pathos and actual acting. I'm sorry, bro.
Well, that's where I was going to go. So Schwarzenegger creates that pipeline. I would argue that Stallone is the template for the modern Marvel beefcake. That idea of taking, an actor with physical presence and pathos and gravitas and just jacking them up out of their gills with, carrots and essentially creating an action star out of an actor rather than taking a guy who looks like an action star and sticking him in movies. And it's funny because, that really defines the majority of Hollywood nowadays, does it not?
Yeah, yep. It really does.
So, something to be said for that.
If you can make Kumail Nanjiani, I can never say his name right, but if you can make Kumail look as buff as fucking Chris Hemsworth, I think, and the fact is I think you're right that that's inspired by a lot of Rocky and Stallone type stuff, because Stallone really did work his ass off to get to that point. And I don't know, man. Oh man, it's gonna be difficult when we start getting to the point when we decide. Well, I think I know where we're all leaning.
Well, it's leaning because we've talked about things that Schwarzenegger is good at. So I
just want to let me introduce this. Here's an interesting wrinkle. Let's talk about each of their worst movies.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. And what they still bring to them that might be redeeming. So,
this is going to be hard to determine.
I know. So I've got two lists up right now, and I'm looking at these. I have a problem with this in general, but these are Rotten Tomatoes lists of every movie that each guy's ever done, right? So the bottom two movies for Schwarzenegger, I have never even heard of his bottom movie, which is a 0% on Rotten Tomatoes. A 1979 non-classic, apparently, called The Villain, which is a Western in which I think Schwarzenegger plays the heavy, but I have never even heard of this movie. So that might be a tough one. But number two at the bottom of Schwarzenegger's list is Batman and Robin. So, and now if we want to, so Batman and Robin can't be they were doing a very specific thing that was almost, a parody of Schwarzenegger. Next lowest rated, End of Days, which was very much a Schwarzenegger movie trying to be a super serious Schwarzenegger movie and failing pretty miserably. But I do still have some fond memories of that movie. So if we're going to talk End of Days and Batman and Robin on the Schwarzenegger side, what are we looking at on the Stallone side? And this is interesting. Stallone has a couple movies that are down in the pits. He also has a 0% movie, which I, again, have never heard of, called Staying Alive, which he produced, wrote, and directed in 1983. But that one's going to have to stay out of the conversation because I don't know if anybody else has ever seen it.
I have never seen it.
Okay. So outside of Staying Alive, Stop or My Mom Will Shoot, which I would argue is the only Stallone movie to even try to do the Schwarzenegger-style parody of his on-screen persona. Mm-hmm. And that movie is terrible.
It's bad.
Terrible. And then, next after that, at 11%, is Get Carter, which was a remake of a Michael Caine movie that really came and went, that Stallone, I think, championed in the year 2000. This was when he was really trying to find his, aging gracefully. This is before he came up with the idea of bringing back all of his old characters. He was trying to find what he was going to do in the new millennium, and Get Carter, quite the miss. So, if we're going to talk Get Carter, and Stop or My Mom Will Shoot versus Batman and Robin and End of Days. What's the takeaway here? Who brings more to each of their respective bombs?
Okay, well, here's the thing. I don't even remember that Stallone was in Stop or My Mom Will Shoot. I remember the lady with the big glasses. And
Estelle Getty, classic.
Yeah. Yeah. That's who I remember from that movie. I don't even remember Stallone being in that. Get Carter, I think I've seen in one of those like TBS late night movie type of things, and it was trash.
Okay, well, this is what I'd like to do. I think this particular conversation is fucking over because Stallone has lost this one. But
Yeah,
I'd like
fair.
to add a wrinkle here. Apex bombs during their actual hot period. Now we could bring back Stop or Your Mom Will Shoot because he was pretty hot when he did that. But I would say the worst movie that Stallone, besides Judge Dredd, because I don't think he was really hot at that point. I think he was really hot when he did Tango and Cash.
Yes.
I think he was actually hot when he did Tango and Cash. Okay, so check this out.
I forgot about Tango
So
and
here
Cash.
is Arnold Schwarzenegger's I am hot as balls, and I still do this movie. Raw Deal.
Ooh.
He was hot as fuck. He had done like Commando, I think, and he done Commando and he signed up for Predator, I do believe. He was hot as fucking a pistol. And he goes from whatever hot shit he did to fucking Raw Deal, which the only thing anybody remembers about that movie is this thing I'm about to quote. He comes home and his wife is mad that he's got her out in the woods and she doesn't have any friends and shit, so she gets drunk and she makes a cake and she fucks the cake all up and he goes, "You should not drink and bake." That's it.
God, dude.
Nobody remembers, and I don't even remember anything else besides that in that whole movie. Tango and Cash, it sucks, but it's kind of cool, man. Tango and Cash
I actually don't think it
cool.
sucks. I feel like I like Tango and Cash.
I mean, that doesn't mean it doesn't suck. Let's just be real.
That's a good point. That's a good point. I like sucky movies. I keep forgetting about that.
But that said, I do have some fond memories of Tango and Cash. And frankly, you want to talk about a movie that like tries to subvert the Stallone persona. Now, granted, it really just comes down to the fact that he's wearing glasses and a nice suit. But in this movie, he's supposed to be like the straight lace. He is the Danny Glover to Kurt Russell's Mel Gibson in Tango and Cash.
Kurt Russell has this nice Lethal Weapon mullet.
Yeah.
Oh, dude.
I'm just saying, I don't hate it. And it also has one of the greatest one-liners that Sylvester Stallone has ever delivered, which is when he shoots a truck that has just been driven off the road in some ludicrous action scene, and cocaine starts pouring out of it, and he sticks his finger under it and then tastes some of the cocaine, looks at Kurt Russell, and in a way that makes you think that he just burned him so bad, goes, "Oh, look, it's snowing." Makes no sense. But man, does he deliver it with conviction. It's great.
Okay, wait a minute. I got a line too from Tango and Cash. And I remember, you remember Robert Zadar? He had like a big lantern. He looked like the guy from American Dad. He played in Maniac Cop. He was a big guy and he had a jaw that was like he looked like American Dad. Think of American Dad's jaw on a real human being. And so this guy is attacking Tango and Cash, and he says something to one of them. He goes, "You broke my jaw," and I think Stallone as Tango says, "You broke that jaw." I don't remember what I don't remember how it went, but it was so fucking funny. It was like the one time he was funny if he was the one who delivered that line. But now that I think about it, I think it was Kurt Russell. So
Now,
we're making the
now I
point
got to
that he's
ask
not
you:
funny.
do you think that line was written on set when they saw that dude's jaw? Like, you got to put this in because that shit's hilarious. Let's make fun of this dude.
Well, Ron, let me tell you something. Do you know who one of the producers was on Tango and Cash?
I do not.
None other than our old boss, John Peters.
No.
And let me tell you something.
Oh my God.
That was 100% a John Peters interjection on set. Hey, you got to make fun of this guy's jaw. Look at his jaw. Make fun of his jaw. That's all Peters.
That's amazing. It has to be a Peters move. That's wonderful. That's wonderful.
Yep.
So as we're wrapping up, we've looked at their successes. We've looked at well, actually, we haven't quite looked at their successes. We talked about We talked about how much money the success has made. So I think that's probably how we'll end. Is we'll talk about their most successful movies and if them being involved with it is the thing that made it good, perhaps something along those lines. But we've also hit like people who tried to be like them. We've hit low points. We've hit a bunch of areas that I think we're getting a big idea now. So,
well, we also hold on. We talked about the Pretenders to the Throne, and I just want to throw this out there before I fucking forget it. I want to see Steven Seagal in an Expendables movie. I want him to play the villain, and the last coup de grace move has to be he gets his arm broke, 90-degree style, like he used to do people. Like that has to be it. That talk about subverting your brand. If he was willing to do that, I would give him no respect. It would go from negative respect to no respect. It would go to zero. You know what I'm saying? If he would just do that. I just had to get that out there. Just him as expendable villain, break his arm, baby, at the elbow, all nasty. That would be fantastic to watch. But he would never do it because he never loses. I heard a story about he was on set and somebody was trying to tell him, hey, you're on a boat, so you can't just walk out any door. And he was like, yeah, whatever. And opens this door and walks into the sea. Just drops right into the ocean. Because he just wasn't listening to anybody.
I don't know if that's true, but it does sound like something he would do.
Dude. So when we're talking about their greatest successes, I know by the numbers Schwarzenegger's winning, and I definitely know all this jazz, but like, to me, the goddamn series that Homeboy was able to make. Rambo was viable and good for 1.5 movies of 4 or 5, 6 now.
6
whatever.
Now, I think.
Yeah. I gotta give him some demerits for that weird one where he was like shooting 50 cals. Like 50 cal, like the bullets in a 50 cal are as big as your arm, and he was shooting them at people who were right in front of the muzzle of the gun, liquefying them. I don't know about all that shit. He fights the Mexican cartel in the last one. It's pretty emotional, but it's not really earned. It's kind of really fucked up. It shows this kind of weird Republican side now. Both of them are Republicans, by the way. I don't want to belabor it, but both of them are famously super fucking Republican.
Well, it's also, also worth pointing out that like Schwarzenegger, weirdly somehow, is definitely the more liberal of the two.
Yeah.
Right?
Schwarzenegger is sort of a rhino, whereas I think because he doesn't talk about it as much, Stallone is maybe a little bit more of a shithead.
Yeah. Which makes me sick. That's the part that makes me fucking sick because, again, when you can put all your heart into making stuff about the common man and then you forget that you're the uncommon man now, that you need to kind of refresh yourself as to the things that the common man has to deal with. You know what I'm saying? He did push-ups and sit-ups out of the ghetto into the big house, and now he thinks that everybody needs to pull themselves up by their bootstraps. It's like, everybody can't do 1 billion sit-ups a day on a movie set, you cocksucker. There are people that have hard shit. They can't write a screenplay in 3 days, and they know a producer. You know what I mean? They didn't porn their way into the industry. They're working. You know what I mean? So that part sucks. But again, Rambo, Rocky, and Expendables, I don't know. You'll never get me to say that those aren't triumphant accomplishments, man. Especially when you get the spin-off movies like Creed. He's got spin-off movies of his fucking shit that he made in the 70s.
And they're great.
You know?
Great.
And I mean, look, the question, are we talking about, as it relates to the things we talk about on this podcast, namely, movies and entertainment? I think that argument you just made, Ed, might be the coup de grace. Yeah. Are we talking more, though, about them as people? Who's the more impressive person? That's a little bit of a different question. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I in that case though, that's the fucked up part about Schwarzenegger, man. Number one, and that's another thing. People talk about Schwarzenegger, or rather, Stallone comes off dumb sometimes. In person-to-person contact, I bet you he's really smart and all that kind of shit, unless you get to politics. But Arnold Schwarzenegger is too charming for you to perceive him as dumb. Anybody that charming automatically gets that +5 intelligence boost. They roll a +5 intelligence boost when they're that charming. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? So he probably presents smarter than he actually is, which I think we've talked about. You know what I mean? So yeah, I think, and as an impressive person, You come over here and learn a fucking. You get to the pinnacle of a sport. Come over here, learn a whole fucking new language, and become a movie star in another country. Marry American royalty and become a fucking governor. Mic drop. There ain't. You can't do better than that. Can you go to Italy and become the fucking governor? No, you fucking can't.
Okay, well, here's the thing. Here's something I'm thinking about, though. Okay, if you look at Arnold's importance in those movies, could somebody else have done those roles and done them just as well? Because we can already say that Rocky doesn't exist without Sylvester Stallone. Period. It doesn't get written. It literally can't exist. Sure, somebody else could have probably played Rocky okay, but nobody else was going to write it and embody it the same way that he did because he knew the character. You know, like I think you could make an argument that Mel Gibson could have gotten beefier and played the bad guy in The Terminator. Or even some really buff guy that doesn't say much but has a couple of lines. Could have played.
I think what they were, as we all know, they were trying to see if Lance Henriksen could be that. So I guess what we're trying to do is imagine the world where Ryan O'Neal is Rocky, or an aging Paul Newman or something as Rocky, and Lance Henriksen playing Terminator.
Well, and frankly, like, you already saw a version of Lance Henriksen playing Terminator in Terminator 2 with Robert Patrick. I mean, the Robert Patrick performance was essentially what Cameron originally envisioned for the Terminator. He just sort of switched it up when he saw, to your point, Ed, Arnold's natural robotic charisma. You know, and so it suddenly became a different type of movie, and he became more of a physical menace than just sort of a malevolent presence.
Well, could they do each other's movies? That's a conversation for you, bitch ass. As we close this out, so Stallone in Terminator, and Stallone in Conan. Dude,
honestly,
that might be hot, dude. Stallone and Conan might be hot.
I think Stallone and Conan and Stallone and Terminator makes a shit ton more sense to me than Schwarzenegger and Rocky, even though a part of me would like to see that too.
Yeah. Yeah, a part of me would like to see it, but I don't think he would do it as well. I don't think the one thing that I would say that Sylvester Stallone definitely has over Arnold is acting chops. I mean, sure, he's playing a little bit of himself as Rocky, but like the relationship between Rocky and Adrian, I don't think Arnold is going to pull off. Could he do cliffhanger? Probably. But like Rocky, I just think like Rocky wins. It's just one of those things where, like, just like you said earlier, it's hard to beat having made one of the most important movies of all time.
You know, I've been thinking about this, and I'm going to just end it this way. For me, it comes down to this. Stallone is the guy who both wrote and performed that moment in the original Rocky where Mickey walks out on him, and he's calling down the stairs. You had your shot, Mick. What about my shot? What about my shot, Mick? And then you just see him chase after him, and in that beautiful wide shot, they hug, and like there's that turning point. Like that all came out of Sylvester Stallone's brain and acting chops, and Schwarzenegger is never going to touch that. However, and I'm giving this last word to Schwarzenegger, in my opinion, Schwarzenegger is the guy who said this, not even in a movie. Believe me, I know the original Nazis. I was born in Austria in 1947, shortly after the Second World War, and growing up I was surrounded by broken men. Men who came home from the war filled with shrapnel and guilt, men who were misled into a losing ideology, and I can tell you that these ghosts that you idolize spent the rest of their lives living in shame, and right now they're resting in hell. And that was said by a Republican politician in the heat of the Trump presidency during the height of the Black Lives Matter movement, in response to neo-Nazis marching and Trump saying that there were some very good people on both sides. As a person, I really do think I respect Schwarzenegger more. As a filmmaker, I think I am going to vote Stallone.
Yeah, well, I mean, you can't follow that. So I'm going to vote Stallone filmmaker and person, Schwarzenegger as well. My dismount would be looking at what they both achieved. They are titans, and there's a reason why there was only two people on this list that we were talking about. Because as we talked about, there's many pretenders to the throne. But to this day, I don't think anybody's made the exact impact. There's been John Wayne, millions of fucking big movie stars that made this sort of impact, but I don't think either of them is touching that zeitgeist moment in the 80s where we had two versions of the Superman to choose from. And they were marketed to the fucking gills, man. You know what I mean? So, and they're a part of a lot of people's childhood. So I'm happy that we talked about these two titans, and I'm happy that they faced off against each other. And I hope Stallone gets his fucking brain right.
Yeah, I'm worried that, it's one of those things, like, I always wonder when people are growing up with, when you become so famous that everybody who's around you is just telling you yes. I don't think Arnold is like that. Like, I don't think I think he probably has people in his life that tell him no. I know that sounds weird, but I just feel like he does. Like,
well, not his maids, apparently. Just to balance some of the idolization. I just want to put that out.
Anybody? Nobody?
Dude, no, fuck that. Mic drop. We're the fuck out of here. That's fucking hilarious. And please, if you want more hilariousness, shit like that, please go to patreon.com/thegreatestpod. And we have a bunch of shit like that on there. We have so much backlog. You can listen to it for days. So we have a $5 tier. We have a $7 tier where you get those great extra pods and you get art. And if you don't want to support us with some shekels, throw down a review. It works really good to stir the algorithm and make us get what we came to get. So thank you guys for listening to this epic episode of The Greatest
Pod.
Pod.